Stop thinking like a poor person. 7 nights listening to Napoleon Hill. Activate millionaire mode in your subconscious. Let me ask you a direct question. What if the problem was never a lack of money, but the automatic way your mind has learned to operate? Sounds strange, I know, but I'll explain how the flow of money works and makes you rich. But first, subscribe to the channel and like this video. Most people work harder, strive harder, demand more of themselves, and yet remain in the same place. Here's the counterintuitive part. The more you force it externally, the stronger the blockage becomes internally. Sounds crazy, right? But that's exactly where the game starts to change. Perhaps you've already tried everything: courses, videos, quick fixes, and nothing has held up. Not because you failed, but because no one taught you how. Working at the right level. The mind doesn't change through shock. It changes through silent repetition. And that's why 7 nights can do more for you than years of random trying. While the world sleeps, the subconscious learns. While you rest, it reprograms. There's no empty motivation here, nor pretty speeches designed to excite you only to abandon you tomorrow. What you'll hear is a simple, profound, and uncomfortably honest process. A way of thinking that dismantles scarcity mindset and activates, step by step, a broader, more strategic, and stable mental pattern. It's not about getting rich quick. It's about stopping thinking small and discovering why, when that happens, the results start to respond. Poor people's thinking doesn't reside in your wallet. It resides on the autopilot of your mind. You don't think like a poor person because you want to. You know? That's not a character flaw. It's an old program running in the background, like an open app draining your battery without you realizing it. And the craziest thing is, many people even earn more, improve their lives, change their cars. But their minds continue screaming, "It won't be enough. It's not possible. Better not even try." The most dangerous poverty is the one that it becomes a mental habit because it makes you give up before you even start. And then it calls that realism. Now pay attention. This kind of behavior often stems from small phrases you've heard for years and didn't even realize you accepted them. Money is dirty. Rich people are all dishonest. I'm unlucky. This isn't for us. Those born poor die poor. And when these phrases enter, they don't enter as opinions. They enter as identity. Then you start behaving as if your ceiling is too low. You limit yourself, over-explain yourself, diminish yourself, and without realizing it, you choose the safe, the easy, the minimal. Not because it's better, but because it's familiar. And that's where the game changes. To get out of this, you don't need an external miracle first. You need an internal reset, a routine that teaches your mind to stop obeying fear and start obeying a new pattern. For example, for 7 nights before going to sleep, you can do something simple and ridiculously underrated. Hear the same message. Write down an idea and repeat a short affirmation with conviction. Like, "I am capable of learning to thrive." I always sound silly? Yeah. But it's exactly this type of repetition that changes the subconscious. And the subconscious, guess what? Changes what you choose, what you avoid, and what you insist on. But there's a detail that almost no one notices. When you start replacing "it can't be done" with "how do I do it?" life reacts in a strange way, and sometimes even uncomfortably. You'll notice resistance, laziness, excuses, a desire to leave it for tomorrow. And that's not bad luck. It's your old program trying to survive. The question is, how do you overcome this resistance without relying on motivation? And it makes your mind switch to that millionaire mode, even on days when you don't feel like it. The subconscious doesn't argue. It executes what you silently repeat. Perhaps no one has ever told you this so directly. So listen to this. The subconscious doesn't evaluate whether something is true or false, right or wrong, possible or impossible. It only registers what you repeats with emotion, especially when the conscious mind is tired, at night, before bed. That's it. It's at this time that defenses fall, the inner critic falls silent, and the idea enters uninvited, like someone rearranging the furniture in your house while you sleep. Think about it. If for years you went to sleep worried, complaining, reliving failures, or thinking, tomorrow will be just another day like this, your subconscious understood the message. It started working to maintain the pattern. Now, when you start hearing the right messages for several nights in a row, something curious happens. The mind begins to look for evidence from that. A different conversation emerges. An idea pops up in the shower. An unlikely invitation happens. It's not magic. It's focused attention. Want a simple and applicable example? Instead of mindlessly scrolling through your feed on your phone, try playing a short audio recording of prosperity ideas before bed for 7 consecutive nights. Always the same one. Write down a key phrase afterward. Something like, I learn quickly. I think big. I act intelligently. It seems small, but small things done consistently beat big, chaotic efforts. And the best part, it doesn't require motivation, just repetition. But here's a delicate point that almost no one talks about. When the subconscious begins to change, it affects your behavior before it affects your finances. You start to feel somewhat out of place in familiar environments, question automatic choices, and realize that certain attitudes no longer make sense. And this can be a little scary, because mental growth almost always comes before material growth. The question is, what do you do when you realize you no longer fit into the old mold? The millionaire mode begins when you change small decisions that nobody applauds. Here's a less glamorous truth. That so-called millionaire mode doesn't turn on when you want it to. It turns on when you need it to. Stop trading old habits. There are no fireworks, no epic music, no announcements. It's silent, almost boring. It begins when you choose to do what is right, even without the will, even without guarantees, even without applause. Because prosperity before becoming money becomes invisible discipline. Notice how most people make impulsive decisions. They buy to alleviate emotions, spend to compensate for frustration, make promises they don't keep, start things they don't finish. But a mind that begins to move away from scarcity does the opposite. It pauses, thinks, and makes better choices. For example, instead of spending 2 hours on random content, you set aside 20 minutes to learn something that can yield more benefits later on. A simple skill, a new concept, an idea that opens up possibilities. It's not about doing a lot, it's about getting things done with intention. An important detail, when you change these small decisions, discomfort arises. You feel like going back, sabotaging yourself, thinking, why do this? That's normal. The brain loves the familiar, even if it's bad. But every time you insist, you send a powerful message to your subconscious. I'm in charge here. And this message begins to change the way you speak, how you position yourself, how you react to opportunities. And it's precisely at this point that something interesting happens. The people around you start treating you differently, even without knowing why. Your posture changes, your gaze changes, your way of speaking changes. You don't become arrogant, you become firm. You don't become anxious, you become focused. And when this happens, opportunities that previously went unnoticed begin to present themselves. The question now is to understand, what simple habit do you need to adjust first, because that's where the next level begins to reveal itself. The language you use with yourself defines the ceiling of your reality. This might go unnoticed in everyday life, but pay attention to the way you talk to yourself. It's not what you say to others. It's the internal dialogue, the one that happens when no one is listening. That's just how I am. This is too difficult. I wasn't born for this. These phrases seem harmless, but they function as commands. And guess what? The subconscious takes everything literally. It doesn't filter irony. It doesn't understand jokes. It just executes them. When you start changing that language, even if it seems strange at first, something rearranges itself inside. Replacing "I can't" with "I'm learning already" changes the game. It's not empty positivity, it's direction. It's like adjusting the steering wheel a few degrees. At first it seems like little, but after a while, you realize you're on a different road. And yes, at first it sounds artificial, kind of forced, almost fake. That's normal. Every new language sounds strange until you become fluent. Want something practical? During the day, observe one thing. Every time a limiting thought arises, don't fight it. Just reframe it. Not now becomes not yet. It's impossible becomes I don't know how, but I'll figure it out. This creates a mental space where the solution can enter. And it is precisely in this space that new ideas begin to appear, almost as if someone had opened a window in a room that had been closed for years. The next question is, what happens when this new language begins to influence your emotions and attitudes at the same time? When the mind changes, the environment reacts, and not always in a comfortable way. This is where many people give up without realizing it. When your mind starts to shift from scarcity mode to a more prosperous pattern, the surrounding environment changes. It doesn't keep up at the same speed. People, routines, conversations, and even old habits start to feel out of sync. It gives a strange feeling, like wearing clothes that once fit well but now feel too tight. And this is confusing because the tendency is to think, am I exaggerating? Am I changing too much? Spoiler alert, you're not changing too much, you're just leveling up. At this stage, the subconscious has already begun to work differently. You start to see opportunities where before you only saw risk. You begin to question automatic choices, pointless invitations, commitments that drain energy. And this bothers people, not only you, but those who lived with your old self. Some people will find your silence, your firmness, your new way of making decisions strange. And that's okay. Growth almost always comes with a certain social discomfort. It happens. A simple example. Before, any invitation was accepted so as not to be left out. Now you start to choose better where you put your time. Instead of complaining about the lack of money, you start to observe how you spend your energy, focus, and attention. Instead of over-explaining your plans, you act more and talk less. This doesn't push the right people away. It just filters them. And this filtering is part of the process of truly activating a new mental pattern. The key point here is to understand that prosperity isn't just about earning more, it's support who you are becoming, and this requires learning to be comfortable with the feeling of transition. Because soon, when this new mindset stabilizes, something changes completely. You stop reacting to life and start taking the lead. And when that happens, an inevitable question arises. How do you maintain this new standard without reverting to the old one when the initial excitement fades? The real test isn't learning something new. It's sustaining that new knowledge when nobody's watching. Here happens the quietest turning point of all. Learning new ideas is easy, even exciting. The difficult and powerful part is continue applying even when the initial enthusiasm fades. Because after a few nights of listening, reflecting, and adjusting the mind, life doesn't immediately turn into a movie. Bills still arrive, problems still arise, people remain people. And it's precisely there that the subconscious observes. Will it maintain this pattern, or will it revert to the old one? At this point, many people fall into a classic trap, waiting to feel motivated to continue. But motivation is unstable. It disappears quickly. What sustains change is identity. When you start to see yourself as someone who thinks differently, decides differently, and reacts differently, your behavior follows suit. For example, you might not be excited to listen to that audio tonight, but you listen anyway because now it's part of who you are. It's not heroic effort. It's internal consistency. One important detail: upholding the new standard doesn't require perfection. It requires gentle consistency. There will be days when you slip up, think small, react badly. That's normal. The difference is that now you notice it faster and correct it before it becomes a habit again. Instead of blaming yourself, you adjust. Instead of giving up, you resume. This attitude teaches the subconscious something valuable. We don't abandon the process at the first stumble. And when this solidifies, something curious happens. You begin to trust yourself more. Anxiety decreases because you know you won't sabotage yourself like before. The mind becomes more stable, less dramatic. And this stability creates space for bigger, bolder, more aligned decisions. The question that begins to arise is, what changes when you realize you can trust your own mind? When you trust your own mind, the game stops being about survival and becomes about strategy. There comes a moment when something changes inside and you feel it. It's not euphoria, it's not fleeting excitement, it's clarity. You begin to realize that you no longer react as before. Problems arise, but they don't overwhelm you. Decisions appear, and you don't panic. This happens because now your mind is no longer in survival mode. It enters survival mode. Strategy, you see? Instead of asking, "How do I avoid losing?" you start asking, "How do I grow from here?" When that inner confidence takes hold, fear loses its remote control. It still appears, of course, but it no longer controls you. You start acting even with apprehension, even without having all the answers. And that changes everything. For example, you start studying something new without an immediate guarantee of return. You initiate small projects without needing to tell everyone. You test ideas without sabotaging yourself before taking the first step. It's not impulsiveness. It's mental maturity. A clear sign of this shift is when you stop seeking approval for every decision. Before, every step needed someone's validation. Now you listen, consider, but decide for yourself. This creates a different posture, firmer, more confident, almost magnetic. People sense it. Opportunities sense it. Because silent confidence communicates more than any motivational speech. And this didn't come from the outside. It came from the nights you trained your mind when no one was watching. And it is precisely at this point that many people realize something surprising. Thriving ceases to be about money and becomes about internal government. You govern your thoughts, your reactions, your choices. And when that happens, the external world begins to align naturally, in due time. But now something even deeper emerges. How can we transform this new mental pattern into a permanent lifestyle without relying on rituals or phases? The millionaire lifestyle only lasts when it becomes a way of life, not just an event. Here's the point that separates those who truly change from those who are merely enthusiastic. When you understand that this process isn't a 7-day challenge, nor a beautiful spiritual phase, nor an emotional peak. It's lifestyle. It's how you think when you wake up, how you interpret a problem in the middle of the day, and how you talk to yourself at night. The millionaire mode doesn't switch on and off. It either becomes the foundation, or it becomes a memory. Many people fall into a subtle trap. They think they need increasingly complex rituals to stay well. More videos, more techniques, more methods. But the truth is different. The more mature the mind becomes, she needs less noise. You no longer need to constantly convince yourself because you've already decided who you are. You act with more simplicity, more clarity, and less drama. And that's a sign of real growth. In practice, this means something very concrete. You start living according to principles, not the emotions of the day. If something deviates from what you've decided to be, you adjust. If a choice takes you away from your mental pattern, you back down. Without guilt, without self-attack, without heavy internal dialogue. It's almost like driving with an internal GPS. You might miss a street, but you won't lose your destination. That's powerful. And when this pattern solidifies, something changes completely. You no longer need to activate anything. Your mind already operates at this level as a standard. You think more broadly, react more calmly, and decide more consciously. The old scarcity mindset may try to reappear from time to time, but it no longer finds space to take hold. And it is precisely here that the next question arises. What happens when this mindset starts to directly impact your visible results? When the results come in, the biggest risk is trying to revert to being someone you no longer are. This is a delicate moment, and almost no one talks about it. When the first results begin to appear, more clarity, more money, more opportunities, more respect, a silent temptation arises. Relaxing too much. The mind thinks, now it'll work. I've learned it. I can slow down. But that's exactly where many people slip up, not because of a lack of ability, but because they think the old pattern won't return. It will return if you give it space. Notice how it works. You start justifying small concessions, an impulsive expense, just this once, a week, without taking care of your mental health, a decision made in the heat of the moment. Nothing serious in isolation. The problem is the whole picture. The subconscious learns quickly, both the new and the old. And if you don't maintain the pattern that propelled you forward, it understands that it was an exception, not your identity. And identity, as you've already realized, matters more than intention. Here's an important turning point. Results are not the end of the process. They are the beginning of the real test, because now you need to learn how to manage growth without losing your focus, to have more without becoming a hostage to it, to make better decisions even with more options. And this requires an even more refined level of awareness. The question that is beginning to resonate is simple but profound. How can you grow without losing yourself, and prosper without abandoning the foundation that brought you this far? True prosperity is knowing how to grow without breaking inside. There's a common mistake almost everyone makes when they start to prosper. They think that growth means accelerating everything. More things, more commitments, more responsibilities, more pressure. But growth without internal structure becomes a burden, not progress. And this is where many people fail. Not for lack of money, but because internal misalignment. Thriving isn't about running faster. It's about running in the right direction, at a pace you can sustain. When your mind is well trained, you begin to notice something curious. Not every opportunity is for you. Not every invitation deserves a yes. Not every shining path leads forward. You start to choose more discerningly. Before, you accepted everything for fear of losing. Now, you select with clarity. This doesn't close doors for you. It positions you better in front of them. And the right positioning is worth more than double the effort. A practical example. When an opportunity to earn more arises, you don't just look at the money. You consider the emotional cost, the time involved, the impact on your routine and your peace of mind. If something requires you to revert to chaos mode, you refuse. Even if it seems like a good opportunity, that's mental maturity. It's understanding that prosperity cannot destroy what made it possible: your clarity, your focus, and your identity. And when you learn to grow like this, something becomes firmly established. You stop living in cycles of ups and downs. Your life enters a more stable, more conscious, less reactive flow. This doesn't mean an absence of challenges. It means the presence of direction. And it is precisely here that the journey naturally concludes. Because now the need arises to integrate all of this into a single vision of life. Not just about money. What are you going to do with all of this now? Now let me ask you something that really matters. What are you going to do with this knowledge? Because listening, understanding, and agreeing is comfortable. But applying it changes everything. How many ideas have you heard in your life that made sense but never became practice? How many times have you felt that this was it, but went back to autopilot the next day? The difference between those who change their lives and those who are only inspired lies precisely here, in the decision to act even when no one is watching. Think for a moment. If your mind truly starts thinking differently, what changes in your decisions tomorrow? In the way you spend your time? In the type of conversation you accept? In what you choose to learn, listen to, and repeat before bed? Prosperity doesn't begin in the bank. It begins with the mental patterns you nurture every day. And now you know this, so there's no more pretending you don't. And if you actually apply it, even if it's just a little each day, how would your life be in a few months? What kind of person would you be becoming? What doors could open if you stopped trading with the old scarcity mindset and adopted a new way of thinking? The change doesn't have to be dramatic, it just needs to be constant. If this content resonated with you, if at any point it felt like it was being spoken directly to you, then here's a simple invitation. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and continue this process. Because learning to think differently isn't an isolated event, it's a journey. And the further you walk, the further you go.